Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Sunday class with some prayers where we praise the scripture which we are studying, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, and the author who wrote this, Rishi Vyas. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritvarshini Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayane Amutvam Anusandhame Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshine Namo Astu Te Vyas Vishal Buddhe Full Arvind Ayat Patra Netar Yena Tavya Bharat Tail Purnaha प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान मया प्रदीपः परपान्न पारी जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पाने ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाये गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ चला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्ये ग्राहवती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवै नदी कैवर्त का केशवा पाराशर्य वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थ गंधोटकम नाना क्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदय रह पेपिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुणेन्द्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदे सांग पद क्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थि तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. We started chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita last week, Vibhuti Yog, and we ended our class with verse number 3. Or verse number 2, I think. Yeah, we did only first two verses. And in the second verse, Lord Krishna mentioned that neither the hosts of heavens nor the great rishis know my origin. Why? Because in every way I am the source of all the devatas and the rishis. And devatas and rishis, I told you, he's talking about the elemental forces. The 7 rishis together represent the intellectual and the mental life of a human being. The efficient and the material cause or causes of creation. And these are the rishis he's talking about, or the devatas. The word dev arises from the root word to illumine. So the sense organs which illumine for us the world of objects for our experiences are the devatas. So it is clear that the self, the pure consciousness, is the source of all the devatas, all the great rishis. So whether our senses or our mind, our intellect, our ego, the self or the soul is the substratum of all. Everything physical, mental, intellectual in each and every one of us. These are just the instruments. So instrument of cognition cannot of itself cognize its objects. Just like a telescope by itself really cannot see. Observer is needed. The same way the observer is who? The self, the Atma. So the consciousness, being the very subjective truth in us, can never become an object of perception for sense organs, or an object of feeling for the mind, or object of knowing for the intellect. This is what he's trying to tell us. But then he says in the next verse, is there somebody who can know it? Is there anybody who can really experience God? Let's look at what he says in verse number 3. Yamam ajam anadim cha veti lok maheshwaram asamuraha samriteshu sarva papai parmuchyate. Ya means who, ma means me, ajam, unborn, anadim, beginningless. Cha means and, veti knows, lok maheshwaram, the great Lord of the worlds. Asamudaha, undeluded. Sa means he, Riteshu, among the mortals. Sarva papai, from all the sins. Parmuchyate, is liberated. He who among the mortals, that means us, knows me as unborn and beginningless, as the great Lord of all the worlds. He is undeluded and is liberated from all the sins. So in other words, Lord Krishna is stating that some people do know him. How? By virtue of his grace. He who knows me. It's not really merely knowing in the emotional or even intellectual comprehension. This is a true and spiritual apprehension which comes to the yogis during the moments of their own intimate identification with the self. And the self is to be realized. Self means the soul, the Atma or Paramatma, realized as unborn and beginningless, Ajam and Anadim, and the great Lord of the world, Lok Maheshwaram. The infinite can never be born, because if it's born, it's not infinite. The self is the eternal, Anadi, so it is birthless. So if it's birthless, it's a deathless also. That's why it's called eternal. That is self. And another term over here in this verse, Lok Maheshwaram. Lok comes from a root meaning to experience. That's a lok. A field for experiencing. So universe is indicated as the world, the lok, but it's not just only the physical objects. The world of feelings, world of ideas recognized. When we react also, when we experience in our lives, that's our lok. So my lok is the field of experience that I revel in at the every level of my personality. At the physical level, at the mental level, at the intellectual level, that is my lok. And we can never be aware of these experiences unless I am there. I, the self. The Atma is the one which is ruling over my world, my lok. And now another term over here to be understood is Sarva Papai. What is the Papa? See, he said Sarva Papai Parmuchyate. We got to get rid of all the obstacles. Pap really obstacle. Okay, paps are the one which do not let us have the experience of this self. They become obstacles. So the moment we understand and live in the realization that the self is unborn and beginningless, and the self is not concerned with the decaying and the perishable matter, we have really gained some spiritual growth. And in the next couple of verses, he's telling us how the self is the Lord of the worlds. Or we can also understand it from these two verses, what kind of qualities we need to cultivate in order to experience this. What he's talking about in the verse number 3. He says, Buddhi Jnanam Asamoha Kshama Satyam Dama Shama Sukham Dukham Bhava Abhava Bhayam Cha Abhyam Ev Cha. This is verse number 4. Continuation of that, verse number 5. Ahimsa samtaha tushti tapaha danam yasha ayasha bhavanti bhava bhutanam mata ev prithak vida. Buddhi. Buddhi is intellect, ability to analyze, ability to analyze properly. That's what buddhi means over here. Jnanam, wisdom, ability to discriminate. And what are we trying to discriminate? Spirituality versus the materialism. Purusha and Prakriti. True and untrue. Temporary and permanent. That's what Jnanam means over here. That is a Jnana. So Buddhi, Jnanam, Asamoha. Absence of confusion. Not being deluded. Asamoha. See, samoha means illusion or delusion. Asamoha means a non-illusion. Kshama, ability to forgive. Satyam, truth. Damaha, self-restraint. And it has to do with the senses. Restrain your senses. Senses are the horses inside us, wild horses. Restrain them. Shamaha, calmness, control of mind, calmness of the mind. Sukham, happiness, joy, delight. That's a sukham. Dukham, pain or sorrow. Bhava abhavaha. Bhav is a birth or existence. Like I am, I exist. Abhav, non-existence, death. Bhayam, fear. Cha means and. Abhayam, fearlessness. Ev means even. Cha means and. Verse number 5. Ahimsa, non-injury, non-harming. Samta, equanimity. Tushti, contentment. Tapaha, austerity. Danam, charity. Yash, fame. Ayash, ill fame. Bhavanti, arise. Bhavaha, qualities. Bhutanam, of beings. Mataha, from me. Ev means alone. Prithak vidha, of different kinds. Intellect, wisdom, non-illusion, forgiveness, truth, self-restraint, calmness, happiness, pain, birth or death, fear and also fearlessness. Non-injury, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame, ill fame, all these different kinds of qualities of beings arise from me alone. Lord Krishna is continuing with the general idea that the Lord is the material cause as well as the efficient cause for the world, this lok of ours. So he is enumerating in these two verses the various qualities expressed by the mind and the intellect. That's what these are. They arise from the mind and the intellect, but they will arise. Otherwise, mind and intellect, they are inert only when they are connected with the Supreme, the Lord. See, who's the Lord of this particular existence? The Atma. Who's the Lord of the entire world? Ishwar. Normally, when we talk of creation, we think it's only in the physical forms. But over here, we see the qualities enumerated for a larger comprehension of the term creation. So that means mental and intellectual personality of ours too. So he is the source of all good and bad natures in living beings. Good and bad both. That electricity is needed. Whether somebody uses it for good purpose or not so good purpose. Okay. And most of these terms you are familiar with because Lord Krishna is using them again and again. In the second chapter also we saw that. And in future chapters we'll see them again. But remember that Shama and Dhamma, those are the very basic qualities we need to cultivate to really understand this all. So Dham is that strength in us. It's a strength. Strength in us which can control the external senses, which can control the hands, which can control my feet, or which can control my mouth. So this is a control in my hand. And this control can be established only when the Atma is present there. And Sham is the faculty of controlling internally the rise of the mental thoughts or even the desires. Because these thoughts, internal thoughts and the desires, they propel the sense organs to run wild in the world of the sense objects. So this is a very initial training we need to go through if we want to walk on the path of spirituality. Dham and the Sham. Sure, we want to know ourselves. We want to know God also. We talk about it, but this is some of the sadhana we need to do. Are my senses in my control? Is my mind in my control? So these qualities, so all of these are qualities actually, they almost indicate a complete classification of the entire world of beings or the field of experience. So we can consider these two verses as a commentary upon the Sarvalok Maheshwar, Lord of the worlds. When he says, I am the Lord of the worlds, so he is the Lord of all of these two. Now, number 6. Maharishyaha Sapta Purve Chatvara Manva Tatha Madbhava Manasaha Jata Yesham Loke Ima Praja. Maharishi, the great rishis. Sapt 7, Purve ancient. Chatvara 4, Manva Manus. Tatha means also. Madbhava, possessed of powers like me. Manasa, from my mind. Jataha, born. Yesham, from whom. Loke, in the world. Ima, these praja, creatures. So the idea which was slightly hindered hinted in the second verse. He's taking it up again here in this verse. Okay. So the 7 great rishis, Maharishya Saptapurve, the ancient 4, Purve Chatvara, and also the Manus, possessed of powers like me, were born of my mind. From them are these creatures in the world. That means these creatures, they originated and they are being sustained also. So the 7 seers, 4 Kumars, and 14 Manus actually. He doesn't mention 14, but there are 14 Manus, according to the Puranas. They are all born out of the Lord's own mind. And they together, when we look at it, the Saptarishi and the Manus and the ancient 4 ancients, so together they are the material and the efficient cause of the entire world. So from them all the creatures have born. That's what Lord Krishna is saying. So Yesham Loke Ima Praja. Let's look at the 7 rishis first, even though we have talked about it last week. So these are the personified representation of the 7 seers. 5 senses, intellect, and the ego. That's what he's talking about. So like a total intellect, which is called Mahat, and the Ahankar, the ego, and the 5 senses. Those are the 5 great elements also you can call, or the elemental qualities, Tanmatras. Sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Those are the Tanmatras. So together, these 7, they are needed for the creation. And who created? God did. And 4 ancient, those are the 4 eternal Manas boys. Manas Kumar, they came from the mind of Brahma. Sanat Kumar, Sanak Kumar, Sanatan Kumar, and Sanandan Kumar. These are the 4 Kumars. But in us, which are these Kumars? Because if we talk about the macrocosm, sure, these are the 4 Kumars. But in the microcosm, we have these 4 Kumars too. That is our Antakara, the subtle body, Man Buddhi Chitta Ahankar. That's what he's talking about. Without these 4, there cannot be any creation. Eternal boys of wisdom born of the mind of the Creator. At the very beginning of his creative activity, we read the stories about it in the Puranas. And who's a Manu, the 14 Manus? Manus formulated the laws of behavior, whether it is a private behavior or a public behavior. In order to be a decent person, as a member of the family, as a member of the community, as a member of the nation or the world, there are certain laws. So Manu. And there are 14 of them. I'm not going to give you the name, but I have the names for you, if ever you are interested. The 14 Manus. So they were empowered for the administration of the humankind, for the establishment and the protection of Vedic Dharma. We are currently in the era of the 7th Manu, where was Manu. Okay, this era is called Manvantra, where was Manvantra. Okay, so this is what Lord Krishna is talking about. A lot of mysticism is used here in these verses. Do not get confused with the mysticism, but try to understand what does it mean at an individual level. Okay? Our antakaran, our sense organs, they are all part of our personality. And then there's a Lord, which is the soul or the self or the consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is guiding. So giving the energy, maintaining us. So that's how our world is being maintained. Verse number 7. Etam vibhutim yogam cha mam yaveti tatvata sa avikampen yogena yujyatena atra sanshaya. Etam, these vibhutim, the manifold manifestations of my being, or the powers of my being. Vibhuti, yogam, the yogic power. Cha means and, mam, mine. Ya means who. Veti, knows. Tatvata, in truth. Sa means he. Avikampen, unshakable. Yogen, in yoga. Yujyate, becomes established. Na atra, not here. Sanshya, doubt. He who in truth knows these manifold manifestations of my being. And this yoga power of mine becomes established in the unshakable yoga. Unshakable yoga means samadhi. It's like a union, connection. There is no doubt about it, he says. Very assertively, he is saying that. Na atra sanshaya. He who in reality knows these two, my vibhutis and my yoga. That person gets established in the realization of the Supreme. Vibhuti and yoga. Vibhuti is the manifestations of beings. Yoga is his power. So it's like whatever has been created outside has been created by God. How? With his power. He who realizes both Vibhuti and the yoga as divine expressions of the eternal realizes the infinite. But he says tatvata, in truth, this realization. That means in reality, tatvata. So that means this knowledge, which he mentioned in all these verses, is to be realized in a subjective experience. And not only realized, then lived also intuitively. It's not that you realize it and after that forget about it. Remember it also. Remembering that I am the self, and when I play through the 7 spheres, I am painting the whole universe. So when the self detaches itself from the individual mind and the cosmic mind, it's like a detachment from that, a detachment from the lower and establishment in the higher. That is what he's talking about, become pain. To know this implication and to live up to this is samadhi. So like a permanently and steadily stay established in the experience of the self. So never forgetting it, that who I am. And now in the next verse, he's going to tell us what is the technique to get established like this. Unshakable, permanently being established in him. Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarvam parvartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhav samanvita. Aham means I, sarvasya of all. Prabhava, the source. Mata, from me. Sarvam, everything. Pravartate, evolves. Iti means thus, matva, understanding. Bhajante, worship. Ma means me. Buddha, the wise. Bhav samanvitaha, endowed with the meditation. He's talking about the bhajan here. He's talking about the worship. He's talking about the bhakti. Okay, this is what bhajante really means. Loving God. I am the source of all. From me, everything evolves. Understanding thus, the wise, endowed with loving consciousness. That is bhav samanvata means. So much love. Because when you have the knowledge of God, God is everywhere, created everything, eternal, birthless. When we know that, when we have a realization of that, there's no way we cannot love him. He says, with loving consciousness, these wise people worship me. They love me. So this, whether it's a microcosm or a macrocosm, everything is created by him. Ishwar is the one who projected the entire universe of polarity. Sure, the Jeev projects out as an individual world, but who is a Jeev? Jeev is nothing but a part of Ishwar. So in both these manifestations, the God principle, the Ishwar, and the individual Jeev, the essence is the same. Essence is the same. Like the same electricity is giving the light through that bulb, and the same electricity is giving the energy to the big factory also, or our heating system, our cooling system, or our fridge. It's the same power. Energy is the same. So the same way in the pure self, in its essential nature, there is no difference. And anybody who realizes this, in reality, Lord Krishna says, will become established in the supreme awareness through the samadhi. Tremorless yoga. Tremorless means there's no fluctuation then. There's no doubt then. This is like a complete connection. I am the origin of all, and from me everything evolves. Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarvam pravartate. He worships me with loving consciousness. And very crucial word in this verse is bhav samanvita, the last term. That really means full of love. We are familiar with this love word. Nobody has to teach love, how to love. That is because that is our essential nature, to love. Other arts, we have to learn how to do it, but love, we don't have to. Nobody has to teach us. Okay, so that love we got to have for God. Love of devotion. How do you measure it actually? Love of devotion or bhakti. By the capacity of the lover to identify himself with the beloved. That's how we know. So love is fulfilled when the identification is complete. That's love. And then further he says, what do these wise people or the lovers of mine, what do they do then? Machitaha madgat prana bodhyanta prasparam kathyanta cha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Machita, with their minds completely in me. Madgat prana, with their life absorbed in me. Bodhyanta, enlightening. Prasparam, mutually. Mutually means with each other. Lord Krishna knows that human beings are social beings. We talk to each other. We interact with each other. When we interact, what do? He says these wise people, they only talk about me. Kathyanta, speaking of, cha means and, mam means me. Nityam, always. Tushyanti, are satisfied. Cha means and, ramanti, are delighted. And again, cha means and. With their minds completely resting in me. That's why I always say, just keep an eye on your mind. At any given time, what is in your mind? With their minds completely resting in me, with their senses absorbed in me, enlightening each other. Bodhyanta. And ever speaking of me, they are satisfied and delighted. We are looking for the satisfaction. Whenever we do something, we want some kind of a satisfaction. But he says, my devotees, these wise people, they find satisfaction and even delight also in talking about me alone, because I am in their mind. So it's a pretty enlivening verse over here. Lord Krishna is showing us that religion is not just only in the temples, but spirituality is not only during your meditations. It got to be outside of our meditation seat also. With the mind completely turned to me. So that means with the mind completely integrated into a steady single pointedness. During our meditations or prayers, at least watch for that. Is our mind only just like a tunnel vision towards God or not? Once our mind, our intellect is soaked with a convincing realization, because God is the essence behind everything, and the Jeev is nothing but part of God, it's one and the same, then you will see that we will feel that channeling towards God. It's like a constantly we can be aware of the conscious principle behind everything. And that's what Matchita is. And Matgat Prana, that really means the senses. Because we have learned that there are 5 different manifestations of prana according to the functioning of different part of our body, organs. It's like a pran, apan, saman, udan, vyan. So this is what he's talking about, that with their life absorbed in me, all our sense organs. So these organs of perception are the peep windows actually, through which our mind wanders outside. So through those windows also, we know that there's a God. Inside also, there's a God. And discussing with one another, bodhayanta prasparam. As we talk to other people, and what do we talk about? Whatever is in our mind, that will come out of our mouth. So if in our mind we have God and God and God alone, when we talk, that's what we'll talk about. Because a bhagat or a seeker is a person who maintains himself a constant remembrance of God. Just like a mother never forgets a newborn baby. Constantly in the mother's mind is the well-being or the taking care of the baby. Whether the mother is eating or even sleeping or cooking or even in the bathroom. Constant awareness of the baby. The same way a bhagat does. And when that's what's in the mind, so the mutual discussions will be about God. So the same idea we have seen before also. He used the word kridanti and ramanti, but now he uses the word tushyanti. See, kridanti means supports. Krida, you play with some object, that's kridanti. Ramanti means reveling in your own mind. But tushyanti is a pretty powerful word he's using over here to indicate the meaning that you're satisfied. You are internally satisfied with the thoughts of God constantly. You don't need anything outside. No other object. God is right there inside you. Because Krida is a pleasure that drives when we contact with something. And Raman is a pleasure within ourselves. Okay? So, Tushyanti is like a whether we are sleeping, we are dreaming about God, we are imagining about God, we are planning about God, we are just remembering God, no matter what we are doing. So in this context, this verse becomes quite clear. The mind of a bhagat. Even while roaming in the external world, there is a subjective inward experience constantly. That's tushyanti. Tushyanti. So all experiences, whether they are inside or outside, because outside this person is talking to people, but he's talking about God. Inside, all the thoughts are about God. He's very satisfied with that. So constantly aware of the God or the consciousness that illumines all the experiences. And he feels a sense of contentment and delight. So this is a very healthy mental attitude. Because the inward atmosphere, there is a purity, there is a calmness, there is a full integration. So that's why there's a full contentment. There's no lurking desires that I have to have this, I have to do this. Total contentment. And having reached this stage of progress, because this is a progress, this does not happen just in one day. This is the result of a sadhana, it's like an intense sadhana we need to do to reach here. But what do you do after this? Lord Krishna is going to guide us in the next verse, and we'll see that next week. And that will be verse number 10. If you want to study it on your own, it will start discussing next week with that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for coming. See you next week.